with our speakers. Let's get right to it. Our speakers include Frank Sharry of the...
We'll go from there. Mr. Sharry, welcome.
Thank you very much. The guts of what's really happening, that's who you should listen to. Let me give you an overview, though. So we've just been through 4 years of cruelty and chaos brought to you by the Trump administration. They weaponized an already miserable and dysfunctional immigration system. And we have a president and a slight majority, a very slim majority in Congress of Democrats that have become more pro-immigrant. So what can we expect? I'd say the progressive pro-immigrant movement is aligning on 3 main goals. One is to undo the cruelty that has been put in place in recent years to stop the pain that has been inflicted on immigrants and refugees. Number 2 is to build back better, if you will, but to build something that has never existed in this country, really, which is a fair, humane, and functional immigration system. And then third is to, and this may actually be the most difficult, is to pass transformative legislation that will put millions of undocumented immigrants on a path to citizenship. Let me briefly name check what the Biden administration has done in the first week, and then just say a few words about why the Biden administration is doing this. So they've done 6 executive orders, 2 DHS memos to change policy, and they've introduced a sweeping legislative proposal. They've ended the Muslim and African bans. They've ordered the reinstatement of DACA for immigrant youth. They've ended border wall construction. They imposed a 100-day moratorium on most deportations, something that was stopped by a temporary restraining order in a Texas court with a Trumpy judge and a GOP attorney general in a dirty deal to try to thwart the Biden administration's most progressive move. They have begun the wind down of something called MPP, the Remain in Mexico program, where tens of thousands of people are stuck in Mexico being denied their legal right to apply for asylum. They've, in addition to the 100-day moratorium, they issued interim guidelines to restrict the number of people who are priority for arrest under the immigration priorities. They have extended something called DED, Deferred Enforced Departure, for a group of roughly 4,000 Liberians so that they can take advantage of a law that allows them to seek permanent status. And then finally, they have ended efforts by the Trump administration to take undocumented immigrants out of the census count for its use in devising congressional seats. The sweeping legislative proposal, it was centered on a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, but I'm hoping people like John Yang and others can talk about the features that haven't gotten as much attention: reduce family backlogs instead of reduce family immigration, invest in root cause alleviation in Central America, and a number of other features that haven't gotten as much attention. The obvious question that we've been getting from many is, how can you pass a sweeping immigration bill in a Senate that's 50-50 and with Republicans becoming the party of Trump? I think most of us are realistic that if there's a chance for a broad legalization bill, it may not be all 11 million, but it may be many millions of people, perhaps attached or included in a COVID or economic relief package, where they use a procedure in Congress called reconciliation, which is a budget rule that allows major bills to go through on 51 votes. I know many of my colleagues think, let's reach out to Republicans. Let's see if we can get 10 votes. Let's see if we can do it. I'm a bit more skeptical, having tried that many times in the past. I think the best way is to look for a way to position legalization attached to a package that can pass with 51 votes, meaning Democrats plus Vice President Kamala Harris. And then finally, just a note on why I think the Biden administration and President Biden and Kamala Harris are leaning into immigration when just prior to Trump, the Obama administration seemed very hesitant about it, somewhat scared of leaning into the issue. And I don't think that's because Joe Biden is a radically different politician from Barack Obama. I think that the tectonic plates underlying the debate have shifted.
Cyrus, unmute.
Yeah. So even if there's a 100-day pause which has been blocked by the court has not blocked the new priorities that have been set forth in the Biden administration. And under those priorities, if you're not a threat to national security, you're not a criminal felon, aggravated felon, you could still try to claim that you're not a high priority and should not be deported, even if there is an outstanding removal order against you. I don't believe this court block applies to the new priorities that have been set forth.
But we understand there are 3 flights that left Louisiana today for Central America. So all the orders in the world don't change the culture and the nature of life. So let's not kid ourselves.
Absolutely. There are 2 questions on, what has shifted in the last couple of months? How has immigration become a priority when it was not?
Well, the factors I mentioned. I mean, the public is way out in front of the politicians on this one. Trump challenged the notion, the self-description of America as a welcoming country. They took a wrecking ball to the Statue of Liberty, to use a metaphor. And the surprising thing is a lot of voters in the middle who don't typically think very much about immigration were forced to think about it. They were forced to think about it when friends and community members were subject to deportation, when families were being separated, toddlers ripped away from their moms and dads at the border, when there were stories of people being denied the chance to even apply for asylum. And so what happened is that instead of going towards the Trumpian view, the Trump view excited the cul-de-sac of his base, but it actually backfired and created more strength with the majority of Americans. So if you look at the polling of all the things that Trump did and what Biden did, the majority is with what Biden did. So that's the wind at our backs, rather than maybe 10, 15 years ago, it felt like for politicians, the wind.
It's for that reason that Advancing Justice AHAC is excited, very excited by the pathways to citizenship offered by the U.S. Citizenship Act. I liken it to the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act. And I liken it to that because not only is it an immigration bill, but it really is a racial justice bill. Just like INA in 1965 was part of a whole series of civil rights legislation that passed in the 1960s, we can view the U.S. Citizenship Act as part of this drive towards racial equity, racial justice by the Biden administration. And in that sense, we see how all of this factors as one. For the Asian American community, some other statistics to remember is that of that 11 million that Frank spoke of who are undocumented, approximately 1.7 million Asians are undocumented. We have probably around 120,000 people who are eligible for DACA. We have 15,000 Asians, specifically Nepalese, that qualify for TPS, or temporary protected status. So all of these different policies that are captured by this legislation affect Asian Americans in a very dramatic and significant way. In particular, we are very thrilled that the U.S. Citizenship Act includes the provisions from Representative Chu's Reuniting Families Act. Reuniting Families Act really focuses on family immigration, which is another cornerstone of Asian American immigration. In this past year and the last couple of years, approximately 70% of Asian Americans come to the United States through the family immigration provisions. And over 90% of our population right now are immigrants or the children of immigrants. So the inclusion of Representative Chu's Reuniting Families Act is a major victory for Asian American advocates who have fought for these provisions in certainly the last 4 years, but it even extends to before that. If you talk about 2013 immigration reform, 2000 immigration reform, and the need to protect families as part of the cornerstone of American immigration. Look, since the 1965 INA, the immigration system has centered around families, with the understanding that families help immigrants settle, they find jobs, they learn English, and they become part of our society. Immigrants, in turn, will take care of their children, bring other relatives that can help with their children, which in turn allows immigrants to find other jobs, build businesses, and really contribute to American society. So it's all part of this package. And it's also, I want to make sure that this dispels some of the myths around Asian American immigration. Although certainly many Asian Americans immigrate here under H-1B or high-tech or STEM visas, that's not the majority. That's only a small minority of Asian Americans that come to the United States. Rather, many Asian Americans that come to the United States are like all immigrants that we know and that we've historically have known. They come here to find a better life. They don't come here necessarily with political power, with wealth, with class, but they come here because they believe in American values. They want to contribute to that innovation and contribute to making the United States a better place. So let me be a little bit more specific about what the U.S. Citizenship Act does, especially as it relates to families. So what it does is it adds green cards to clear the long backlogs that sometimes extend up to 20 years for certain countries in Asia. And it allows families to be reunited here, and it lifts the country caps, which is something that oftentimes we have talked about as a barrier to entry that creates these long lines. It adds green cards to clear the backlogs for employment-based visas. Because like I said, although employment-based visas are not the majority of Asian American immigration, it does provide a component. So it does help with the H-1B process and their families that are stuck in those perpetual temporary status. It also ensures that children do not fall out of status when they turn 21 and codifies work authorization for spouses on what are called H-4 visas. It also offers enforcement relief by eliminating the 3 and 10-year bars and providing family unity waivers so that mixed status families can finally sponsor their undocumented loved ones. And even some who have been deported can seek to be sponsored by family members. It promotes diversity by building upon Congress's desire to ensure that people from all countries have an opportunity to immigrate to the United States and expand the diversity visas. And this is something that I expect that Patrice from UndocuBlack will talk about as well. Importantly, it also provides a pathway for LGBTQ equality in our immigration laws by treating permanent partners as spouses, which is particularly important for the LGBT community because there are certain countries where same-sex marriages are still not allowed. It also provides protections for orphans, widows, children, and Filipino veterans who fought alongside Americans during World War II. It also allows immigrants with approved family sponsorship petitions to join the family here on a temporary basis while they wait for their green cards. So there's a lot in this bill that we are very excited about. It really modernizes our system and creates several different pathways and opportunities. It clears backlogs. It allows for families to stay united. When we talk about family separation, clearly we do need to talk about family separation at the border. But the other component of family separation is because of this legal immigration process where families are separated and not allowed to reunite in the United States because of these backlogs and the like. The other component of the U.S. Citizenship Act that we should note is that it also includes Representative Chu's No Ban Act. So as you probably know, President Biden already rescinded the executive orders related to the Muslim ban and the African ban. But the reality is that another executive order by another president could reinstitute those bans. So part of this legislation makes it that much harder for another president in a future administration to reinstitute these bans